weirdest thing that ever happened to you that made you think that God was real? And I'm not talking about believing in some kind of universal energy. I'm talking about something that was so coincidental that Jesus himself must have been sitting in your living room listening to you talk. For me, it happened a few months after my dad passed. I got up just like I do every day and went over to my little prayer wall, said my normal daily prayers, and then got ready to leave. Before I left, I stopped there and I said, if anything out there is listening to me at all, if there really is anything listening to me, I could use the sign that you've got my dad or that he's okay, because this is going to absolutely destroy me. I'm not going to survive it. I walked away from there. I went about my day and I expected absolutely nothing. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I get a phone call from my brother. He said, hey, you remember that dream I had a few months back where Dad showed up at the house, but we all knew that he was gone, so it was weird that he was there because he's not supposed to be there? I said, yeah, why? He said, because that dream picked back up last night, right where it left off when he was asking for a cup of coffee. So I made him the cup of coffee. We sat down in the kitchen, we talked for a little while, and then he went to the front door to leave. He turned around when he got outside and he looked me square in the face and he said, this is my last stop. Tell Sarah I'm okay. I was just calling to relay the message. Halfway through the conversation, I knew, and I was going, oh God, you are not about to actually do this, because I asked you for a sign, but I don't really want it, because then I have to be held accountable, and I'm not interested in that. And then when my brother said what he said, it turned into irritation. Why couldn't you have just given me that dream? I would have loved to have seen my dad, even if it was just in a dream. Oh, that's right, because I talked about it, prayed for it, and my brain just dreamt it, so I would have written it off. Then my irritation turned to sheer panic. Is there actually a God listening to me? Is there actually somebody listening to me? Because if there is, I need to clean up my mouth. First things first. I've always heard people say that God knows what you need before you ask for it. And this was one of those things that I just could not chalk up to a coincidence. My brother had the first half of that dream 2 months beforehand. He had no clue that day that I had asked for that morning. God knew I was going to ask for it. So he gave my brother that dream that night so he could call me that afternoon. First time I've been able to tell that story without turning into a complete and total mess. What's your weird story?
I used to work for a pulmonologist, and the pulmonologist decided randomly one day that he was going to sell the office and shut it down, and everybody was going to have to find a new job. Well, this kind of made me a little bitter. I was angry. I was angry with God because I thought that was my forever job, and I didn't really want to find a new job. I was almost 50. I liked the job I had. However, I had no choice, so I found a new job. Found a job at a cardiologist's office. So I'm almost 6 months in, everything's going great. I'm at church on a Sunday, and I start to get chest pain. And I thought, that was an odd pain. I never felt that before. And then it happened a second time, and I thought, okay, well, you're getting my attention. And then it happened a third time. And I thought, maybe I should go to the ER or say something to my husband. You know, maybe I should address this. Now, let me give you a little background. When I was young, we never was taken to the hospital unless you seen blood or you had a limb hanging. You just didn't go to the hospital. So I'm kind of stubborn that way, and I have high tolerance for pain. So I just went on home from church, and I laid down on the couch the whole day, rested. Monday morning, got up for work. I felt a lot better. Went to work, and I had a lot of dictation to do. So I was sitting there doing my dictation. My left arm kept going up, and I kept shaking it, thinking, this is odd. And so it happened a few times, and then I just started not to feel well again. And I thought, well, maybe I'm coming down with something, and I need to go home and lay down again. So I went to my office manager. I was going home sick, and I'd be home the next morning. Everything should be fine. I just thought I was coming down with something. So I'm walking out of my office. Now, let me just tell you this. Our office sat in the back of the parking lot of the hospital. So I'm walking out of the office, and I literally hear the Lord tell me, Valerie, you need to go to the ER. You need to go to the ER now. Now, normally, this is just something I wouldn't do. But because I heard that voice so distinctly, I followed the direction, and I went to the ER. Checked myself into the ER, told them, I hadn't been feeling well, I had some chest pain, and I just wanted to get checked out. Didn't tell them that I worked for a cardiologist, not just a cardiologist, but one of the best cardiologists in our area. So they, of course, take me back, and they do all the tests, they do the blood work, and my blood work for heart issue came back 1 point elevated. So the hospitalist came in to go over my symptoms with me, and I told him everything that had been going on, and he said, well, your blood work came back 1 point elevated, so we're going to go ahead and keep you overnight. We're going to do a stress test in the morning, but just in case, we're going to do a CT with contrast. So I'm like, okay. So at this point, I had been there for 2 hours, hadn't called my family, heard about that. So called my family, told them I was in the hospital. They were going to keep me overnight. So of course, both my daughters take off work, come to the hospital. My husband was a truck driver, and he was already 16 hours from the house. Called him. So they did the they did the CT with contrast, and the hospital was packed. They finally admitted me in the hospital later that evening. They put me down in a room, and the nurse had come in and was asking me all these odd questions, and my daughter was a nurse, and I kept looking at my daughter who was sitting in front of me, and I could tell that she kind of knew what they were getting at, but she wasn't saying anything. So another nurse came in, and it was a younger nurse. He was fairly new, and I thought, well, maybe I'll ask him and he'll slip up and he'll just tell me. So I asked him, if he could tell me if my CT came back, if they found anything on my CT. He said, no, ma'am, I can't tell you anything, but that nurse that was just in here, she went outside to get onto the doctors and have a doctor come up to talk to you right now. So I look at my daughters again, and instantly I see, fear on their face, and I get a little fearful, but still I'm okay. And about 10 minutes later, a doctor comes up and he says, ma'am, I need to tell you that you have an aneurysm. And I said, okay. I worked for a cardiologist. I knew an aneurysm could be treated with medication. He said, ma'am, it's a very, very large aneurysm, and it cannot be treated with medication. It is on your ascending aortic valve, and they are going to have to cut you open. So he walked out, and I'm still kind of in denial, and I look at my daughters, and the nurse came back in, and the nurse asked me if I had any questions. And so then I decided to tell her I work for a cardiologist, and told her who he was. And she goes, well, if you work for a cardiologist, you would have his phone number, right? And I said, well, yeah, of course I have his phone number. She said, well, if I work for a cardiologist, I would probably call him and ask him to see what's going on, so he could give you more information. So I messaged my cardiologist that I worked for. I told him what's going on, and he said, give me a half hour. I'll look into your chart, and I'll call you right back. Mind you, this is like at 9:30 at night. So exactly maybe 29 minutes later, I get a call back, and he says, Valerie, you have a very large ascending aortic aneurysm. It is measuring at 5.7 centimeters. They are going to have to cut you open to repair this aneurysm. You are not going to have that done here. I know a doctor in St. Louis that specializes in this type of aneurysm. I've already called him, and he's agreed to take your case. So first thing in the morning, there will be no stress test. They will come and pick you up by ambulance, and they will take you to St. Louis to operate on you to repair this aneurysm. And so, needless to say, the next morning I took an ambulance, went to St. Louis, got to St. Louis, talked to the surgeon there. The surgeon remeasured, and he said that the aneurysm was actually 5.9 centimeters. So he did check my vitals, asked me how I was feeling, and I was feeling okay. I was just hungry. I hadn't ate anything in 2 days. So he said, if it's okay with you, I just got out of a long surgery. You're doing well. I'll let you eat something, and we'll do your surgery first thing in the morning. So that was fine with me. Everything went good. So they did my surgery. It was a long surgery. It was a hard surgery. The surgeon went in to talk to my family after he operated and repaired the aneurysm, and he said that the aneurysm was already descaling, which means it was getting ready to explode. He said within 2 weeks, someone would have found me on the floor, and I would have been dead before my knees buckled. So, do I believe in God? I absolutely believe in God, and I believe that God puts you where you need to be where you need to be, and gives you what you need when you need it the most. He knew I was upset about leaving the pulmonologist's office. He put me in a cardiologist's office with one of the best cardiologists around that could get me the treatment that I needed. He took care of me like he always does. He had my back. And he told me to go to the ER. Had I not listened to that voice that said, Valerie, you need to go to the ER, there was no doubt in my mind that I would not be here right now. So yes, I believe in God, and I will tell the world He is real and He loves you.
When my daughter passed, the grief was so strong that I just couldn't bear it. And years had passed, and I would just beg God for a sign to please let me know that she was okay. And one morning the phone rings, and I answer it. And it's this little girl, and she says, "Hey, Mom, it's me." And instantly I knew that it was her. And my heart starts beating fast, and I'm just listening. And she said, "I just wanted you to know that I'm okay." And I'm just listening to this little voice, and it brought so much peace to me. And she says, "Please let everyone else know that I'm fine and that I love them, because they can't hear me like you can." And then all of a sudden, my alarm starts going off. And I start panicking because I realize it was just a dream and it wasn't really a phone call. But was it?
Way back in my younger days, I was about 22 or 23. I struggled a lot. I was married. We lived in low budget house, and we got put out of everything we lived in. My spouse wasn't a good financial advisor or a good financial leader. He tried, but he just wasn't it. I had got so adapted to the struggle that I was living in it comfortably, and that's not a good place to be, especially with small kids. On this particular day, I was coming back from my daughter's Head Start school. At this point, I didn't have a car, so I was walking my daughter to school. I was just happy to be able to put her in Head Start and have a break from one child because I still had another child on my hip. So I would walk my daughter to school proudly every day with a baby on my hip. And this particular day, I walked up in the yard, and the water company was out there. The man came from behind the house. He was like, "Hey, here go your ticket. I had to cut your water off. You had an outstanding balance." I said, "Yes, sir, I understand. I knew the bill was outstanding. We just didn't have money to pay the bill, so we knew you guys were coming, you know what I'm saying, sooner or later." And he was like, "Ma'am, did you hear what I said?" I said I had to cut off your water. I was like, "Yes, sir, I heard you. I appreciate you. Thank you for coming out, and we'll work on it." He kept on insisting that if I go get my bill paid, he'll come right back and turn it on because he didn't want to leave me with no water, with a baby on my hip with a diaper. But as I always say, I was humble because I knew it wasn't the end. I had been living in the struggle so long, I was used to these things getting cut off. The man had sat in my yard for about 10 minutes. He was on the phone, so I was guessing he was taking his calls and talking to the head office, letting them know that he disconnected me and he was on to the next house. After about 10 minutes, the man watched me out the window. He got out of his car. He brought me another slip of paper, went back behind my house, turned my water back on, and told me he paid my bill in full and also put money on it to keep it current for a while. I begged and pleaded him for me to get his contact so I can give him his money back when I got the money. The man would never give me his contact. He wouldn't give me his name. I asked him his name a million times. He said, "Don't worry about what his name is. It doesn't matter what his name is." He said, "Just know that God is real." And he walked off my porch. He said, "After all of the people that I've met in my lifetime, I've never seen anybody so humble in a struggle. And you were humble knowing that you had no control over me cutting your water off. And you were still humbly sitting here enjoying your day." And I just really want him to know that trouble don't last always. And if that wasn't God, I don't know who it is. Because when you send a person like that at a time like that, when you just don't know what the next move is, that man probably had no intentions on doing none of that day. But if God don't talk to your heart, then I don't know who's speaking to you. I don't manifest anything. It's power in the tongue. I don't believe in all that manifestation. I ain't nobody. I ain't superior like God. I can't make it happen like He can. And for that, I'll always be grateful. He showed up for me on multiple occasions when me and my children were staying in hotels. We got on a hotel program that allowed us to stay in a hotel for almost 6 months, and they paid for it all. And they told me when I applied for it that the waiting list was so long that it'll be a year before they can even get to me. I called them folks one day. They called me the next morning and got me in there. So don't talk to me about God, because when you got favor on your life, God's favor is better than any man's favor. You can't tell me my God ain't real.
So for me, it happened pretty early on in life. I was a teen mom, and I came from a big Catholic family that kind of sheltered me a lot. I knew nothing about being a mom. I knew nothing about teen pregnancy, but yet here I was. So at an early stage in my pregnancy, I went to my OBGYN, and he mentioned that there was something not concurring with the amniotic fluid and the baby in the sac. So he was sending me to the perinatal center just to get an opinion on whether I should keep my baby, which to me is just crazy that I heard that. But again, here, naive teen girl that is pregnant and is having a baby. I went to the perinatal center. They were actually kind of upset, and they thought, that is crazy that he said that. Everything is perfectly fine with your baby. My pregnancy was uneventful from that day forward. Very simple. Went into labor. Everything was fine. And my son was born with Down syndrome. We knew nothing about Down syndrome, obviously. But as the weeks went by, he started getting sick. Health-wise, he would projectile vomit everything he ate. Everything he drank, he would just spit out. So I think around the third pediatrician I went to see, I said, listen, no one's helped me. Something's wrong with my baby. I want to know what's going on. And this pediatrician told me that my son wouldn't last 2 weeks. He said, I give your child 2 weeks to live. Now, I would have totally felt like there's no way. I must have imagined that. But my mom was with me and heard the exact same thing. So I was grateful, because at least I knew I wasn't going crazy. Needless to say, we both got home very sad, and my parents suggested that maybe we call the priest and get my baby baptized in an emergency situation. So that night, the priest came over to the house, baptized Robbie, my son, and my brother and my sister, who were still in high school at the time as well, baptized my son. Now, that morning, my mom said that she had a dream, almost felt like a vision, but a dream, that she saw Jesus up on a rock with a bunch of babies around him, and he had my baby in his arms. She said that at the time she cried to him, and she said, please don't take him, please. And he handed him to my mom in her dream. He handed my baby Robbie back to my mom and left. And basically was kind of saying, I'm leaving him with you. So the next morning, my mom, obviously with tears in her eyes, she told me about her dream. Both of us still really sad about what we had just learned from the doctor the night before. And she went off to work. She came back home from work, and she said, oh my gosh, look what I found in the newspaper. And this was it was probably the only Latin newspaper back in that day. And she said, look what I found in the newspaper, and I read it, and I cut it out for you. And I think it's meant for you, because I think it'll remind you that, God is always with us. This is the newspaper clipping. Not only do I believe that God exists because my son was given 2 weeks to live and now is 27, but this always reminds me that he is with us and that he exists. Not too long ago, my husband's aunt had a major brain tumor discovered, and she was going to go in to get it removed. And she came to visit us before she went in, and I gave her this to her. And I said, hey, I'm lending you this, and I want you to read it because I really feel like it helped me through a difficult time. And she took it with her for about a year. She's A-okay, had the tumor removed, amazing, doing amazing. She just returned it not that long ago. And I want to read it. It's in Spanish, but I'm going to translate it my best in English. And if you want me to read it in Spanish, I could do another video where I read it in Spanish. But it always reminds me that he's with us. And I hope I don't get choked up, because every time I read it, it's called Tu Amigo Jesus, which means your friend Jesus. And it reads, "How are you? I wanted to send you this note to tell you how much you matter to me. Yesterday, I saw you when you were walking and talking with your friends. I waited all day, hoping that you would want to talk to me too. As the day went by, I gave you a beautiful sunset, and I gave you a cool breeze so you could relax. I waited because I always love you and because I'll always be your friend. I saw you fall asleep last night, and I wanted to touch your forehead, so I let the moonlight graze your face. I waited once again, wanting to hurry so that maybe we could talk. I have so many gifts for you. You woke up this morning, you were in a hurry, and you didn't have time to talk to me. My tears were in today's rain and in the dew this morning. Today you seem so sad, so alone. It hurts my heart to see you this way, you know, but I understand. My friends also let me down, but I love you. I try to tell you through the sun, through the blue sky, through the green pastures, through the flowers. I try and scream it through the mountains. And I give the birds songs of love so they can sing to you. I give you all the sun rays, and I give you perfume in the air with the essence of Mother Nature. My love for you is more profound than the oceans and bigger than any necessity you could ever have in your heart. If you knew how much I want to walk with you. I know how tough life on earth can be. Gosh, do I know how hard it is. I want to help you. I want you to know my Father. He wants to help you too. You only have to call our name. You only have to ask. I won't take your time anymore. I know you're very busy. But please don't forget that I love you. Your friend, Jesus. So yes, God does exist for me and for all of us. But anyway, I'm so glad I got to share this with you because it's meant so much for the past 27 years. And I'm grateful that I was able to read it to you.
So I'm going to take this as a sign that I need to tell my story because God wouldn't have put it on me if He didn't want me to share it. So I'm not good at TikToks, but I'm going to share this. This summer, right after the 4th of July, it was about 4 days after the 4th of July, I got this unbelievable urge to go visit my uncle. I had been sitting on the couch at my house. We were about to get our kids ready for bed. It was 9 o'clock at night. That's important to note. And I just got this urge. I need to go see my uncle. I told my husband, I was like, I'm going to go visit my uncle. And he said, you know, it's 9 o'clock at night. He's like, why? Why are you going now? And I was like, I just got this feeling that I need to go see him. And I haven't seen him since he had his motorcycle accident on the 4th of July, so I'm going to go see him. And he was like, instead of arguing with me or making a big deal out of it, my husband said, okay. So that was the first red flag, I guess you could say. It was the first thing that made me think something's out of the ordinary. Well, I took my younger son, or my older son, Colin, with me, and we went over to my uncle's house. Now, when you leave my house, you can either take a left to go toward where he lives, or you can take a right, which takes you on about a 15 to 20 minute detour through town and then to where he lives. Well, when I left here, I just took a right. We get all the way into town. I didn't realize my mistake until we got all the way back to where the other road would have spit us out. And I said, Colin, why did you let me go that way? And he said, I thought you knew what you were doing. I thought you were going to go to the store or something. I was like, okay, well, don't tell your dad. He's already mad because I'm out at 9 o'clock at night and I took a wrong turn and that just tacked on 20 minutes, you know? So anyway, we end up showing up at my uncle's, and I knocked on the door, and I very politely said, I don't know why I'm here so late. I just wanted to check on Uncle Johnny. I wanted to say hey, and I love you guys, and make sure he's okay after his wreck. And of course, they, as always, welcomed us in with open arms. They hugged us. One thing I didn't mention is that my grandmother has been living in his basement, or had been living in his basement, and my mom had been there as her caregiver in my uncle's basement. Well, I wasn't planning to go visit the entire family, so I was just visiting my uncle who had had the accident. So we go in, we talk for 15 to 20 minutes. I tell him I love him. I just wanted to check in on him, see how he was doing and everything. And I started to make my way out the door. Well, as soon as I stood up and started to leave, I'd hugged everybody by, the phone rang, and it was my grandmother from downstairs calling my aunt. And she said, her daughter, my mother, had passed out. Well, my aunt looked at me and she said, you need to go downstairs. You need to see what's going on with your mom. She just passed out. And I was like, I was still headed out the door. So anyway, I turned around and I told my son to stay upstairs because I just got a gut feeling that something bad had happened. So I go down the stairs, and when I got to my mother, she had not just passed out. She had completely collapsed. Her lips were black, and a lot of people from this app knows usually what that means. I didn't, because I don't surround myself with that type of lifestyle. Apparently my mother had bought a painkiller pill, a prescription, what she thought was a painkiller, from someone that she knew and trusted, her family member, someone that was within her family. And she had taken half the pill. Well, we later found out it was laced with fentanyl, and she made it from where she took the pill in the kitchen to the couch before she collapsed. It took about 45 seconds for it to take effect. And like I said, she only took half the pill because even she had sent text messages to that person saying, I got a bad feeling about this. This isn't what I purchased. And she kept saying, this doesn't look right. And the other person was, oh yes, it's right. I'll send you pictures, and all this other stuff. Went out of their way to convince my mother that this pill, there was nothing wrong with it, and it was the prescription pill that my mom wanted. Anyway, back to where we were. My mother had collapsed, and her lips were completely black, and there was no breath sounds, no sounds of life, no nothing. I looked up. I had somebody help me get her into the floor, and I immediately started chest compressions, CPR with rescue breaths. I listened. Like I said, no sounds of breath, no nothing. I did that. I don't know if you've ever done CPR, but if you have, you know that it's exhausting. It is absolutely exhausting. When you do it in the classes on the mannequin, it's pretty exhausting, but on a human, cut that exhaust time in half, because you're going to get exhausted so much quicker. So anyway, I did the CPR on her, the chest compressions. I had someone put 911 on the phone in front of my face so that I could speak to 911 while I was doing this. I found out later that she had overdosed, and what she had taken was fentanyl. And I did the chest compressions until my body literally, I kept looking up trying to get somebody around me to take over chest compressions. Nobody could. Either they physically were unable, like my grandmother, or they didn't know how. So I did this until my body literally gave out on me, and I stood up, and when I stood up, I said, I cannot do this anymore. I said, she is not here anymore. She is gone. And I stood up, and the paramedic swooped in under me and rolled my mother to her side in the recovery position and felt for a pulse. And she had a pulse. They gave her Narcan. They gave her a few doses of Narcan. It took 2 doses there, another one in the ambulance, and then they also had to do they had to shock her chest. So anyway, my mother did live. But when I tell you that I have never felt more like God was playing chess with me that day, I literally felt like God was sitting next to me on the couch saying, go visit your uncle. When I made the wrong turn, God was saying, I don't want you to leave 15 to 20 minutes early. You have to be there. So I left the house, and I took the wrong turn. And when when I felt like I couldn't do anymore, it's like God's hand was on my back pushing me to do more. And then when the paramedic had gotten there and I didn't even know they were in the room, God just picked me up and moved me out of the way. If that's not the work of God, I don't know what is. And I've struggled to tell that story. I've struggled to share it with anyone. Because it still scares me that God put that on me. Because I'm not the most religious person. But what scares me more is knowing that that story has to be shared with someone. My mom is thankfully now she's gotten a lot of help, and she's now reached out to a lot of the channels that she needs to reach out to. She's pain pill free, and she's cut a lot of people out.